this video, we show you about the Farmers' Bill controversy and why farmers are protesting. When we talk about Farm Bills 2020, we're essentially talking about three separate legislations. Number one, the Essential Commodities Bill 2020. We will call this one the Essential Commodities Amendment. Number two, the Farmers' Produce Trade and Commerce Bill 2020. Let's call this one the Marketplace Law. Number three, the Farmer Agreement of Price Assurance and Farm Services Bill 2020. We'll call this the Contract Farming Law. Let's check whether the three farm bills in Parliament are good or bad. The Essential Commodities Act was first brought in several decades back in 1955. The act basically controls the production, supply, and distribution of certain commodities that are essential. So, if an item comes under this act, for instance, a food item or an important drug, then companies and supermarkets, etc., cannot hoard these items when there is a shortage, or they can't artificially increase the price. The new Essential Commodities Amendment removes food items such as cereals, pulses, potatoes, onions, edible oilseeds, and oils from the list of essential commodities, unless there are dire circumstances like a war or famine or any extraordinary price rise. Further, the new amendment says the government cannot impose a stock limit. That is, it cannot stop a supermarket chain or any other retailer from hoarding, unless there is a 100% increase in price of perishable goods or 50% increase in price of non-perishable goods. Critics say that this amendment will lead to increased hoarding and an artificial price rise of things that you and I, and people much poorer than us, need every day, such as rice, wheat, potatoes, onions, oils. Now, let's move on to the second food bill, the Marketplace Bill. Before we go into what this bill, or actually act, says, we need to understand how farmers currently sell their produce. In every state in India, the state government, let me repeat, the state government can set up something called APMC, an Agriculture Produce Market Committee. The APMC sets up markets, or mandis or yards, in several places in the state, which is where farmers bring their produce, and wholesale and retail traders come to buy the produce via auctions. The APMCs across the country ensure that farmers get a fair price for their produce and aren't forced to make a distressed sale. Plus, the idea is to get rid of the middlemen. The buyers and commission agents are regulated by the APMCs by providing them licenses, levying market fees, and any such charges were always regulated. Now, the new marketplace law says that farmers can sell their produce anywhere, and not just in the APMC approved marketplace. And they can sell interstate or intrastate or even online. According to the union government, this law is being brought in to give freedom of choice to farmers. They will have a variety of marketplaces, the government says, and this is actually going to be good for the farmers. The idea is not to shut down APMCs, but to expand a farmer's choices, the government says. Critics, however, point out a few things. Firstly, agriculture marketing is a state subject under Schedule 7 of the Constitution, which means the union government has no business making this law in the first place. Secondly, the APMC markets currently ensure that farmers get the minimum support price. Researchers, activists, and actual farmers are worried that if they have to conduct trade outside of the APMC marketplace, they won't even make this much because the new marketplace law does not mention MSP. While some people say that setting the minimum support price in the law is problematic because the MSP will have to change frequently, and changing the law again and again is a pain, others point out that the law can at least say that the trade will have to be above the minimum support price. This can increase distress sale by farmers, and ultimately, freedom of choice means nothing if they cannot protect their interests, experts say. And that brings us to the last of the three, the contract farming law. Now, this law, also passed by the Parliament, says that farmers can enter into written agreements with anyone, including a company, and sell them their produce for a set period of time, as per the contract. In other words, companies can now have contracts with farmers for buying produce. They can set the price for the produce, the standards and qualities, and other legalities beforehand. The union government says this will protect and empower farmers to sell to anyone, a wholesaler or retail giant or exporter. They will have written contracts which will protect them if the buyer tries to cheat them, and they can sell future produce today, the government says. Critics, however, point out that this is wishful thinking. 82% of farmers in India are small and marginal farmers. That is, they farm on 2.5 to 5 acres of land. Is this farmer who has 2.5 acres of land going to be able to go to court against a massive supermarket chain? What happens if the buyer says the contract cannot be fulfilled because the quality of crop is not what was agreed? What protection does the farmer have then? Interestingly, there is no mention of a mechanism of fixing a price. There is also an apprehension that the free hand given to private corporate houses could lead to farmer exploitation. So, if we look at these three laws together, the worst case scenario that emerges is this. Corporate companies can now have contracts with farmers to buy their produce, but farmers will not have the protection of a minimum support price. Essentially, farmers can get exploited by corporations, and the mechanisms proposed for their protection are impractical, says critics. Further, the corporation retail chains can contract a whole bunch of farmers and hoard produce and artificially increase prices for profit. And there will be little that consumers like you and me can do about it, says the experts. Tell us your opinion. Do you think Farm Bills 2020 can increase the income of farmers? Express your thoughts through the comment section below.